Jack the King Kirby is the absolute GOAT of comics. There's no one better, in my eyes, at creating new characters, creating imaginative stories, just creating all new worlds, and the artwork he puts together and the action-packed nature of it, and just like the plethora of ideas he's had in the medium. And he's probably most known for superhero comics. He also co-invented the romance genre in comics. He's also had a great history with war comics, but one of the most interesting and probably underrated aspects of his career was the period of his monster comics. They came in the late 50s, early 60s. And that's going to be the subject of today as we look at two omnibuses, or should I say monsterbuses, from Marvel Comics that feature all of Jack Kirby's monster comics that he did for Marvel. So stay tuned and watch this video until the end. And we're back. My name is Taylor. This is Taylor Talks Comics. Thank you for joining me on my 31 days of horror comics. Every day of October, I'm doing a different video on a different horror comic or horror comic related topic. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of those videos. And I also have a handy dandy playlist called Halloween Horrors 2025 that you can go to and catch up on any of the videos that you've missed out on. And I implore you, just take a look, check them out, especially if you're in the spooky mood. Click on a video, a thumbnail that maybe is a comic book you're not aware of or never heard of. See if you might dig it. I'm trying to show off all the different things that the horror genre can offer within comics, from classic comics to modern comics, from manga to European comics, from the whole gamut of the medium. I absolutely love, and I want to show that off. So today we're going to show off monsters, the two monster buses that Marvel came out with. And I absolutely love these spines. They look so great on the shelf. And then they say Monsterbus on here instead of Omnibus. And these are just two volumes just chock full of great Jack Kirby monster comics. And you can see all the different covers on the backs of them. And on the front covers, they did a good job of choosing two famous monsters that debuted within these pages. They were just offhand monsters, just like all the other monsters within these pages. But then whether it be Jack Kirby or different creators in the future would go back and bring these same characters into future stories. So we have Groot, the monster from Planet X, who's obviously made famous on the big screen of Guardians of the Galaxy, but before that he even came back in stories years and years ago. And then Fin Fang Foom right here. So these are really beautifully designed as well. So I'm going to take the dust jackets off of both of them, show you underneath. While I'm doing that, please give the video a thumbs up. And comment down below with your favorite monster comics, or your favorite Jack Kirby comics. Anything you want to talk about, I'll talk to you guys down in the comments. So these are both kind of wraparound covers. Let's see if I can do this without damaging the book too much. But you see like the image wraps around on here on volume 2. And you can see they did a good job of, like, the image still goes on the spine a little bit, but they darkened it so you can still see the title there. And the same thing on this one. Get a great massive image there from Jack the King Kirby. So start off with volume 1 and open this baby up. So you get the classic marbled look that Marvel is doing back. Feels like a Masterworks treatment that they would do. And these have never been reprinted. They were being, here's a great title page. They were being liquidated, I think, and you can find them for pretty cheap a few years ago, but now they're out of print and they're a little bit harder to find. If you have some good eBay searches set up, save searches, and are hunting for a better deal on things, you'll probably find them for a good deal. And I don't think Marvel will be in a rush to reprint these, unfortunately, because I don't think they're very popular. I think there's probably a niche audience that loves these classic 1950s, early 60s comics. But I'm hoping things like this video will highlight how good they are, and then maybe people will clamor more for reprints of these when the Near Mint Edition reprint poll comes about. I love the table of contents, though, how they like danced around the character here, just to have some more Jack Kirby art. Anytime you put more Jack Kirby art, I'm going to be a fan of it. So here's the introduction. The first volume, the introduction, is written by Corey Settlemyer. Corey is famous for doing a lot of the restoration in Marvel Comics from this era all the way through the early 60s and stuff. A lot of the Masterworks treatments Corey Settlemyer is in charge of. So I just want to flip through here and show you off all the different weird monsters and science fiction that and horror that Jack Kirby is working with here. So the first volume makes up all of the late 1950s stuff, and then there's like the perfect break of it, because in between volume 1 and 2 is when the Marvel Age, the Marvel Silver Age, begins with Fantastic Four #1, which obviously Jack Kirby had a major hand in that creation. So then volume 2 is all monster, sci-fi, horror comics from Jack Kirby that don't include superheroes from post Marvel Silver Age beginning. So it's kind of interesting to have that context of reading this first volume of these were all the ideas that Jack Kirby was coming up with Stan Lee and Larry Lieber prior to the superhero age of Marvel Comics. There's so many fun like Easter eggs throughout here of things that were like coincidences within comics. Like this is Prison 2000 AD, and now there's like a 2000 AD publisher in Europe. No idea if there's any connection between that, or if that's where 2000 AD got their idea from, or if it's just the fact that it's not that, not that common of a it's not that original of an idea, I guess. But there's even like interesting things here throughout here where there's like the Invisible Man, which you can see that was an idea for Jack Kirby for the Invisible Woman or Invisible Girl. Test Pilot, you can see him working out some sci-fi space travel work. And there's even I'll show you the back matter in these books too. One of them includes like a little letter from Jack Kirby from the 1993, and I can't remember what publication he wrote that in, but he was writing about what the influences in science fiction of this era were, at least for him, and that was a lot of space travel, because we didn't go to the moon until 1969, so prior to that, I love these two because they include every cover, which I'll get to, of Jack Kirby's within here that he did for this run. But a lot of the, it was like the atomic age and space age. So we didn't go to the moon until 1969, but prior to that, there's Sputnik and all this other speculation of what space travel will look like, if there's life on other planets and things. And then the atomic age brought about radiation and all, what kind of effects that could have on things. Like if we drop an atomic bomb on a country or start, testing atomic or nuclear energy on our own country, is that going to create some radiated, mutated monsters? So those are the kind of influence he's going for. Jack Kirby was never a blood and guts horror, like pushing the envelope kind of thing like you'd get from some of the EC Comics artists of the same era, or a little bit prior to this era, perhaps. But so his was a lot more family friendly, I suppose you could say. So you're not going to get anything that's like, similar to pre-code horror comics or anything like this. This is all post Comics Code Authority, anyways. But the way this would work, all these were serialized in like World of Fantasy, Strange Worlds. We saw Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense. And those were the names of the magazines, just like all publishers at the time had those magazines. Like EC Comics had, Weird Science, Weird Fantasy. They had The Vault of Horror, Hunt of Fear, Two-Fisted Tales. Like they all just had like a cool name, but it's generic to the story. I love this giant sea monster. But these were all serialized throughout that. So you pick up one of those issues. Like you pick up Tales of Suspense issue number 8. And within Tales of Suspense number 8, there will be probably 3 or 4 stories. And Jack Kirby would do one of them, perhaps 2 sometimes. And that the only ones that are included in here are the Jack Kirby ones. So this is all Jack Kirby artwork. If he did the cover, they include that. And then they include the story that he did. So none of the other stories that were done by other artists are within here. And again, this whole first volume is all from the prior to the Marvel Silver Age beginning. And it's just so much fun. Like, you can just, like, this is a perfect bedside table book, in which I think all EC Comics or any sort of comics anthology kind of, these comics that have, like, 6 to 8 page strips in them are perfect for, like, bedside table reading. Like, you just, before you go to bed, just pick it up and read a few stories and then put it back. And then, you always have it there to do that with, that kind of routine. So yes, I love having these next to my bed for that exact reason. And let's look at the back. For the back matter of this first volume, we get some original art pages. This is by Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. So I think Steve Ditko inked this one. But I do know that IDW did a artist edition of this era of Jack Kirby's artwork. Here's Groot's first appearance, the original art piece. Can you imagine having that? Looks like Dick Ayers signed it 11/21/1993. It was sold at Heritage Auctions, though. So I'm sure that piece went for a gazillion dollars at this point, with the original art piece page of the first appearance of Groot. Here's a letter from Stan Lee to Jack Kirby. And here's some covers of reprints that reprinted some of these stories that Jack Kirby did the covers for. And sometimes it'd be new artwork, sometimes it'd be reworked artwork, I think. Where Monsters Dwell. This was like, I don't know when these came out. These issues, but I think they were coming out in like the Bronze Age and Modern Age, where creatures roam. And these are issues that I never find in back issue bins. I never find Monsters on the Prowl or any of those issues. But I can't imagine them being like too sought after or too expensive on the secondhand market. But I'd love to start kind of finding these and just picking them up as I find them, because it'd be cool to read them in this kind of format. Fear, Journey in Mystery, Tomb of Darkness. So all these awesome covers you get throughout here. And then here's some more weird Wonder Tales. You get some full page ones in here now. Here's the King Size Incredible Hulk with some of the reoccurring characters from within this omnibus. We have Groot, Titan, Goom, Taboo, Diablo, Blip. They all have such a funny names to them. But yeah, IDW did a artist edition with this era of comics, and they also, but it was like, it's like very large, because it's back then. During this era, Jack Kirby and most cartoonists, especially at Marvel, were drawing on, I think it was 18x24 size paper. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on the dimensions there. And then they eventually went to 11x17 because they realized it was faster to draw on smaller paper. But so that artist edition is true to size to what the original artwork was like. Again, I just love the design for this book with these awesome title pages and this extra Jack Kirby artwork. But yeah, so the first story here, Amazing Adventures number 3, came out the same month as the Fantastic Four number 1. This is volume 2 I'm looking at now. And the last story that we get, the last official story we get, it looks like it's 1962. So the Monster Comics didn't run for too much longer than that. Now here's an introduction by Walt Simonson, which is awesome. Walt Simonson's always been a huge Kirby fan and had a lot of Jack Kirby influence in his artwork. And it's a great story about him talking about how in the summer of 1961, he went to the comic book rack. And at first reading that, you're like, oh, so he's going to be talking about how great reading Fantastic Four number 1 off the stands was. But no, he's talking about a monster comic he picked up. And it was the first time he ever saw Jack Kirby's artwork, and then it made him a fan for life. Jack Kirby drawing dinosaurs, reminiscent of Devil Dinosaur. So these comics now in volume 2 are all after Fantastic Four has already debuted. He's starring Dr. Droom, which would then obviously turn into Dr. Doom, and a much different character, but that name was kind of repurposed, reworked. Moomba. I just love the funny names they'd come up with for these characters. And but yeah, there's a blast to read these. Here's Fin Fang Foom, Origo, the Unconquerable. They're just so much fun. Like, I just can't express that enough. And that's how I feel about all Jack Kirby comics. Anytime I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan. Like, anybody that watches my channel knows that. But I've not read every Jack Kirby comic that I could get my hands on, or that exists, or that he's ever done. And I kind of love that, because every time I can discover or read new Jack Kirby comics, it's always a treat. And it's so much fun. And these omnibuses are fairly new to my Jack Kirby reading. I just got these in the last couple of years. I got volume 1 or volume 2 first, because when I finally bought these, this one was still in print, but volume 1 was out of print, so I had to hunt that down for a good price. Now on the bottom here, they do keep this kind of stuff on here, which occasionally they would write things on here to get you to be hyped about another book. Like, I know The Incredible Hulk has, when he's about to debut within Marvel Comics, they have like, here comes the Hulk kind of thing. But if you've never read a comic like the Fantastic Four, get your spine-tingling copy today. And also, these are in order of job code. I should have said that as well. So Corey Settlemeyer went through and found the job codes for each of these. So they're not exactly in chronological order of how they were put onto the stands, but they're in chronological order of how Jack Kirby drew them, best to his knowledge. This one I love, Craig Goom. It just gives me a 2001 Space Odyssey vibes right here. And this is Steve Ditko doing inks on that story. This was a really cool one, because it's like a cosmic story. But And oh, by the way, I have a video on my channel showing off 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even like the red suits, like it just reminded me of that so much. Could have just been on my mind at the time as I did that video fairly recently. The two-headed thing, like this. And look, the covers are always great. And it's also great to see. I should show this off in the first volume, but some of the things that, like the Kirbyisms or Kirby tropes that you get from his comics that you notice throughout the Marvel age, where like you see like people. Let me see. I could probably find one relatively soon. Just like the way the characters are always having conversation, they're always doing something interesting. But then like the characters looking into the camera as if they're scared. Or like this one right here, like he's looking at you at the camera angle. A lot of them are like this one right here. This lady right here is like looking at the camera, freaking out, afraid as this giant monster's coming through. And also, like some of this like reminds me of, who did the inks on this one? Dick Ayers. I know the Hernandez brothers, Gilbert and Jaime, were big Kirby fans back then. And this kind of has a little bit of that Love and Rockets feel to it when they're doing these monsters. Like Gilbert has a history of drawing big giant monsters sometimes, and the line work on this woman here reminds me a little bit of like early Jaime Hernandez. Yeah, Jack Kirby was so influential to so many different future cartoonists and things, and it's just great being able to read these comics that aren't bogged down with the Marvel continuity of superheroes sometimes, which I love that too. But it's good to just be able to read some of these quick strips and move along. Now the back matter in this one is really good stuff here, so let me get to that. All right, so we get a lot of these covers here. Oh, am I still out there? Yeah, okay. So we get some original art pages, which we saw in the other ones. And just great to see some Kirby original art. The Man in the Anthill, obviously this would then become Ant-Man. So that's a really cool one to have the original art page for. Here's the Monster Masterworks. I don't think I've ever seen this in person. But, oh, this wraparound cover is by Walter Simonson. Was this a trade paperback then, I assume? Yeah, this must have been a trade paperback that came out a long time ago. Here's okay, so there's a few letters in here for Jack Kirby, because this one's from 1989, and that appeared in that Monster Masterworks 1989 book. And then here's Stan Lee in 1993 writing a letter. Yeah, here's the one I was talking about. Here's the 1993 Jack Kirby one, which he passed away in 1994. So this was a year before he passed away, writing this letter and reminiscing about how he would do these monster comics and what his influences were, and then how it informed a lot of the stuff he would do with the superheroes later on. Here's a cover by Steve Ditko for Monster Menace. And then back here's some great covers from newer artists, like here's Eric Powell doing a few covers, Eric Powell of Goon fame. And he's got a Thor comic coming out with Abrams Comic Arts coming out next year. And I've always thought there was some Kirbyisms in his artwork. So it's great to see him actually doing Kirby artwork, like literally doing monster covers with Jack Kirby in mind. And then he's going to be doing the thing later on. Here's Steve Bissette writing a afterword. This is from the Amazing Fantasy Omnibus from 2007, so they included it in here. Steve Bissette is famously not a fan of superheroes, but he loves monsters and horror. So it's great to hear from him in this. Here's Dan Brereton doing a cover. Don Heck and Richard Eisenhoff. Who did this one? I think that's just a reworked cover by Jack Kirby. Here's James Stocco doing a cover of a monster, Jack Kirby monster. This was on the complete collection of Rocket and Groot by Mike Mignola, which is cool. Mignola is another artist that has some obvious Kirby influences in his work. This one's obviously Mike Allred, right? Yeah, Mike and Laura Allred. Another artist that has a lot of Kirby influence in his stuff. Who's this one, though? Oh, Tony Moore. Okay. Journey into Mystery. Chris Samney doing a piece right here. Dan Brereton again. Jeff Lemire. Oh, I forgot about this one. So this is Fantastic Four. Yeah, Simon Bisley doing this one. So there's some really cool artists in here. I think these were all Chris Bacalo. Variant covers, Arthur Adams, another Kirby influenced artist. I think these were like variant covers on comic books. I don't know when or why, but I'm glad they included them in here. Mike Del Mundo, Francisco Francavilla, and then John Cassaday. So some really cool pieces that they're out there. But yeah, these are the two monster buses. I can't recommend these enough, especially for Kirby fans. or just fans of people that want to read some good 50s sci-fi monster, which is like there's a great plethora of movies and stuff from that same era that I enjoy. But these are awesome omnibuses. I can't recommend enough. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up. Comment down below with your thoughts on Monster comics, on Jack Kirby comics, on your favorite Halloween horrors of comics, or whatever you want to talk about. I reply to all comments. And give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. You don't want to miss out on my 31 Days of Horror comics that I'm doing. I'll have another video tomorrow showing off a different horror comic. So everyone, thank you. Keep talking comics.